Hello and good morning, dear viewers. You're most welcome to the DAKTARI program, a health episode, which airs on West Nile TV every Thursday from the hour of 11 a.m. to noon. And I'm always your host, Sunday Junior Tom. Yet again, today we are delighted by a team from CCare or IMC here in Arua City, Arua branch, who are also going to take us through some topic which is exciting for you, our viewers, and also it will educate you. Then also we know we have kids who are back from the schools. Also, please give keynote to this episode because it will help you, because you could also be victims of this challenge in case you don't abide to the doctor's guidance as she'll take us through. However, let's first get our guest introduce herself, then we pick on from there. Thank you.
I'm Dr. Iklai Caroline, working with CK Arua. I possess a bachelor's degree in medicine and surgery. Basically, in CCare, we offer a variety of services. We offer gynecological services, we offer dental services, optical services, and also we offer pediatric services are also available, and also general practitioner services where we attend to patients and manage simple conditions like malaria, typhoid. Yes, so basically in CCare we offer specialist services and also general practitioner services. Yes.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Caro. We are delighted to have you come educate the viewers of West Nile TV. We don't take that for granted. However, our topic of discussion today, we're going to look into intestinal obstruction, and we would love you to clarify it and break it down for the viewers such that they get to understand what intestinal obstruction could be. Thank you.
So, before I talk about intestinal obstruction, I would want to talk about the digestive system. The digestive system involves the following. It starts from the mouth, then we proceed to the esophagus in the throat, then from the esophagus we proceed to the stomach. From the stomach we go ahead to the small intestines, large intestines, then the rectum and anus. So the anus is basically the end point of the digestive system. When we're talking about intestinal obstruction, basically we have two types of intestines. We have the small intestines and the large intestines. Both the small and large intestines are very vital part of the digestive system. The small intestines are involved in the digestion of food and absorption of nutrients into the body, just like the large intestines. They are also involved in the digestion and absorption of nutrients in the body. Yes. So when we eat food is supposed to pass through a certain channel. It's supposed to move from the entry point, which is the mouth, esophagus, the stomach, then from the stomach, the small intestines, large intestines, then rectum, then finally the food is excreted through the anus. So when there's an interference in that normal flow of food, that's what we call what? Obstruction. And the biggest percentage of obstruction occurs in the intestines. That is the small intestines and the large intestines. Though when you compare the two, the biggest percentage, almost 80% of obstructions occur in the what? In the small intestines, as compared to the what? Large intestines.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Caro. And actually, I've gotten a feeling of how intestinal obstruction looks like. You are telling us as long as this food is no longer flowing as it's supposed to flow from the opening point up to the end, maybe there is a blockage, then that's an intestinal obstruction. However, you told us most happens in the small intestines compared to the large intestines. Could there be some reasons as to why maybe most often these blockages happen in the small intestines compared to the large intestines?
Most of the obstructions occur in the small intestines because of the narrow lumen. Because when you compare the small intestines and the large intestines, the lumen of the small intestines is narrower compared to the lumen of what? Of the large intestines. That's why you find that most of the obstructions occur in the small intestines as compared to the large intestines.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Carol. I hope the viewers have now gotten to understand why she's telling us that these intestinal obstructions occur most in the small intestines. However, Doctor, I would love to know from you, which things could the viewers outside be doing which could put them at a risk of getting this intestinal obstruction? Because you never know, they could be outside there involving some activities, eating some foods, which could put them at risk of being victims of this obstruction. Thank you.
Okay. So, basically, what predisposes a person to being at a high risk of getting intestinal obstruction? There are some factors that I'm going to talk about. The first one, that is the commonest, we have what we call post-surgical adhesions. As you see, intestinal obstructions are mostly common in people who have had a previous history of abdominal surgeries or pelvic surgeries. Let me explain more. You see, like after surgeries, there's what we call adhesions that are normally, they are abnormal, but sometimes they are formed as complication of surgeries. Adhesions, these are scar tissue, like scarring, scar tissue that normally forms after surgeries. And that scar tissue that forms after those surgeries sometimes can end up narrowing the lumen of the intestines. You understand? So when the lumen of the intestines is narrowed, you find that food cannot properly pass through the lumen of of the intestines, so causing obstruction. Yeah, so basically the take note is that the biggest percentage of obstructions are caused by post-surgical adhesions. And most of these patients, when you take history from such patients, they will tell you that maybe 2 years ago or a year ago, they had an abdominal surgery or pelvic surgery performed on them, which complicated into scarring within the abdominal cavity. So that scarring is what causes narrowing of the lumen of the intestines. So when the lumen is narrow, you find that food and water cannot properly pass through the lumen. Then another risk factor, people with cancer, especially abdominal cancers. A case for example, we can look at colorectal cancer. Though it's not common in developing countries, mostly it's in the developed world, the colorectal cancer. So you see, those cancers can end up compressing externally. That growth, a cancer is an abnormal growth. It can end up compressing the intestine. So when the intestine is compressed, you'll find that food will not properly pass through the intestines. So that also can be a risk factor for intestinal obstruction. Post-surgical adhesions, cancer. Then also hernia. These are abdominal hernias and pelvic hernias, hernias within the pelvic region. For example, umbilical hernias, inguinal hernias, femoral hernias. Hernias also, people with history of hernia are also at a high risk of getting intestinal obstruction.
Okay, maybe what's a hernia?
Okay. A hernia is basically a condition where we are having intestinal contents, or basically you can say the intestines protruding through the abdominal wall. You find that the intestines, a portion of the intestines is not in the abdominal cavity. It ends up coming out through a defect in the abdominal wall. And hernias are common in people who lift heavy things. People who lift heavy things, like new people lifting sacks of beans, portion. Because of that lifting of heavy things, you end up exerting pressure on the abdomen, and because of that pressure exerted on the abdomen, it can cause part of the abdominal contents to protrude through the abdominal wall. Yeah. So also people with history of hernia at a high risk of what? Of getting intestinal obstruction. Then also there's a condition we call volvulus. Volvulus is where the intestines twist. You understand, like twisting of the intestines. Of course, when the intestines twist, also it can predispose someone to getting what? Twisting of the intestines can predispose someone to getting intestinal obstruction. Then also ingestion of foreign bodies. There are some foreign bodies that cannot be digested. For example, let me say psychiatric patients, like those mad people, some of them end up plucking their hair and eating it, especially the mad people. So with time, you find that that hair ends up accumulating within the lumen of the intestines. And when it accumulates, with time it can end up blocking the lumen. Hence what? Obstruction. Though it is rare, but in the psychiatric population, you can find that also that can end up causing obstruction. Because you find that hair is something that cannot be digested. It cannot be broken down by what? The body. So you either excrete it, but you cannot absorb it into the body. So with time, those mad people, if you keep on plucking hair and eating it, with time that hair accumulates within the intestines as obstruction. Then also worms, especially in children. The worms I'm talking about, these are round worms. Yeah, for parents, this goes to parents. We should deworm our children, because if you do not deworm your child, with time, those round worms, in science we call them as caries lumbricoids. Those are round worms. They can also end up collecting within the lumen of the intestine, hence causing what? Obstruction. Yes. Then also infections are part of the causes. Then also there's what in children there's what we call also intersusception. So intersusception is a scientific term, but to break it down, intersusception is a condition where a portion of the intestine falls inside. It ends up folding inside another segment of the intestine that is near it. So intersusception is common in children. Because of that folding, also, this can predispose someone to getting intestinal obstruction. Thank you.
Actually, you have been precise and you have made us understand things people in the community could be doing which could put them at risk of getting this intestinal obstruction. However, when we are talking of the foods, people love these hard corns. Could eating hard corns also put him at risk of developing maybe an intestinal obstruction? Thank you.
Basically, I've never heard of hard corns causing obstructions. The foods that normally cause obstructions, though it is rare, but science says there's evidence that such foods cause obstructions, are these foods with a lot of fiber. Because you see, fiber is something that cannot be digested. By digestion, I mean it cannot be broken down into finer substances. You understand? So foods with a lot of fiber also tend to cause what? Obstruction. Though in Uganda, there is little evidence supporting that, but in the developed world, there is a lot of evidence that supports this statement. Yeah. So the foods that cause obstruction are those high fiber foods, especially cassava. Though in West Nile, I don't think there are cases. This cassava is the most common food. I don't think I've never heard of someone eating cassava. Yeah. Though according to science, high fiber foods also tend to cause obstruction because fiber cannot be digested. So because it cannot be digested, it ends up accumulating within the lumen of what? Of the intestines, it's causing obstruction.
We are going to continue eating our hard corns, but when we are eating them well. However, I also would love to know from you. You have given us like those part of the predisposing factors, could they be also the same, or maybe could also you take them to be the direct causes which could lead to intestinal obstruction?
These are just, they are just risk factors. Yeah, indirectly they can contribute to what? To obstruction. Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Carol, for that clearance. Then also would love to know from you, uh, how can someone in the community get to know that they're having an intestinal obstruction now that we know even kids are home? You have told us people also are at a high risk of getting this intestinal obstruction are kids. How could they get to, or maybe the indicators that they could be having an intestinal obstruction?
First of all, let me first give a small preamble. With obstruction, you're not excreting. There's an interference in the normal flow of food within the digestive system. So, because there's what we call the retrograde and anterograde movement of food. So, food is supposed to move in the anterograde direction, like it's supposed to move forward. But now in obstruction, the food is not moving forward, like from the mouth to the what? To the anus. So you will find that there will be a retrograde movement of food, in that because you're not excreting, you end up what? Vomiting. So the major indicator or the major sign of intestinal obstruction is vomiting. There is no anterograde movement of food, so there will be retrograde what? Movement of food. So most of the patients will present with what? With vomiting. Then also there will be constipation. There's what we call, in science, there's what we call constipation and constipation. So some patients will come with a patient will come with a history of not passing stool for some number of days. So most of them, inability to pass stool also can be a sign, or even gas. Some patients will have that inability to pass both stool and gas. They will tell you, doctor, I've taken 4 days without going to the what? To the toilet. Yes. Then also there will be abdominal pain. Yeah. And most of the times this abdominal pain, when you rate it on the level of 1 to 10, it's around 9 to 10. The abdominal pain is so severe. Yes. They will have abdominal pain. Then also the patient will be generally weak, because remember, you're not absorbing food. Everything you're eating is coming out. You're vomiting. So they tend to suffer from low glucose levels. So the person will be weak. Severe generalized body weakness, vomiting, all those are signs. Inability to pass stool or even gas. For us, we call it flutters. Yeah, but they will have that history also. Yes. Then in children, especially children who are having intestinal interception, they can also have a history of passing bloody stools, because, as I said, interception is a condition whereby part of the intestine is folding into another segment that is near it. So for children, also passing of bloody stools can be one of the signs and symptoms of what? Intestinal obstruction. But take home, it's majorly vomiting, abdominal pain, even the abdomen will be swollen, because things are not coming out. All you're eating is accumulating within the what? Within the intestine. So the abdomen will swell because of the contents within the intestines, also because of gas. Too much gas also can make the abdomen swell. So basically, those are the signs and symptoms.
I hope the viewers are getting an elaborate explanation or views how you could identify that you have an intestinal obstruction. However, doctors, you are talking about, you said someone, yeah, okay, I'm picturing intestinal obstruction as someone even can't visit the toilet at all. You said someone could not pass stool around 4 days, for about 4 days.
Yes.
But we have seen cases in the community where people have also constipation. So someone may get constipation and think they're having an intestinal obstruction. How can a viewer differentiate those two? Then also you clear for us the air could be maybe having heavy blows. You know, kids like fighting. Could maybe having heavy blows and someone's abdomen also predisposed them to getting intestinal obstruction. Thank you.
How we can differentiate just constipation from intestinal obstruction? Most of the times when people are constipated, you'll find that they are not vomiting. And also, most of the times when someone is constipated, abdominal pain will not be one of the presenting complaints. Yeah, with constipation, someone can just be having that complaint that they haven't passed what is stool, but the other signs and symptoms I've talked about will not be present. Someone can be constipated without vomiting, without having that abdominal pain or even abdominal swelling. But with intestinal obstruction, the real picture will be the vomiting will be imminent, the person will be in severe pain, which is not present in constipation. Trauma generally, like maybe when people are fighting and someone ends up boxing the other on the stomach, it will not cause obstruction. What it can cause, maybe it can cause organ injury. Someone can box you and end up injuring your spleen, injuring the intestines, but obstruction, not really. I haven't yet found evidence that supports that trauma can lead to intestinal obstruction. Trauma basically can cause organ injury. You can box someone and rupture their spleen. You can box someone and end up injuring their intestines, or you can box someone and end up injuring their bladder. But I haven't found evidence that supports trauma causing intestinal obstruction. Thank you.
I hope the viewers have gotten to understand to differentiate the two between constipation and this intestinal obstruction. However, we would love you also to clarify for us, Dr. Carol. We are showing someone in the community or a viewer is viewing us, they have notified they are vomiting, they're having a swollen abdomen, they have not passed stool for days, maybe the pain also is too much. You said maybe if it's straight, a scale of 0 to 10, maybe it's around 9. What should be the next steps for this person to do? Are there some home remedies, or they could look at it as an emergency which needs urgent care? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So once you notice someone is having those signs of symptoms I've talked about, intestinal obstruction is not a condition to joke around with. So once you notice these signs and symptoms, I urge the people in the community that when you notice this is an emergency, take the patient straight to the hospital. Yes, don't try to give painkillers. I know most people will try to give some painkillers or herbal remedies, because the abdomen is swollen. So you may think maybe it's witchcraft. What? You try to do some interventions at home, but what I want to educate the community is that intestinal obstruction is an emergency. So once you notice those signs, someone hasn't passed stool for 5 days, someone is vomiting, each and every day that passes by, someone is becoming weaker and weaker. Don't try to be a medical professional, but just take the person straight to a hospital. And it's better not even to take the person maybe to a clinic. It's better you take to maybe a regional referral hospital or hospitals that have theaters, because this is an emergency that the person even can end up being taken to theater.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Carol. I hope the viewers have gotten to understand. For viewers, when we maybe are talking about intestinal obstruction, they could be thinking it's something easy, but the doctor has told us it's an emergency, whereby in case you are not quick to act, it can take your life. I hope I'm right.
Yes, it can.
Yeah. So please, the viewers, in case you get any of those signs and symptoms, it's advisable, as she has told us, immediately rush to the hospital for specialized management and care. And we are going to first recommend Dr. Carol will take us through what is done, how can the confirmatory tests they always bring the hospitals to confirm that maybe it's an intestinal obstruction, and she'll take her through the care and what you're supposed to do in order to prevent getting this intestinal obstruction in your family and in your kids, or maybe to you.
West Nile TV, lighting up the region.
Unwrap your holiday cheers with StarTimes this Christmas season. Starting the 15th of November, simply pay your monthly subscription for the next bouquet and automatically enjoy content on the next higher bouquet, plus a chance to win exciting prizes. Your gift box contains variety of local entertainment and fresh shows, exciting cartoon and fun kids entertainment, mega superstars, local and international, a memorable trip to Spain to watch a La Liga match. And that's not all. Lots of prizes to be won, including ZTE Nubia smartphones with free 15 GB Airtel data. StarTimes gift that keeps on giving. Merry Christmas. This message is powered by ZTE Nubia. Better for all.
Kiki?
Ngowangula.
Nsasula emyezi 3 nempangula.
Hey!
Ha!
Abaye, ubatachi.
Kituufu ensasula emyezi 3 mpangula. Kituufu.
Subscribe for 3 months to any package of your choice or grab an Azam TV kit and pay for 3 months and stand a chance to win life-changing rewards. Android smart TVs, fridges, motorcycles, and that is not all. You could walk away with free subscription or the grand prize of 20 million Ugandan shillings in cash. Yes, 20 million grand prize. Subscribe today and enter the draw. For more information, 031-2308-900 or visit any Azam TV dealer near you.
Azam TV, entertainment for everybody.
West Nile TV, lighting up the region.
We'll be back, dear viewers, from that short commercial break, and I'm your host, Sandy Junior Tom. Those who have just joined in, our topic of discussion today is about intestinal obstruction, and the doctor we have on set today, our guest, Dr. Carol from CCare, IMC Arua branch, told us that this condition is an emergency. So in case you happen to get any of these presentations she told us in the first segment, like vomiting, she told us could be one of the factors. Then actually reading one, vomiting, not passing stool for days, a swollen abdomen, and intensive or severe pain. Please look at it as an emergency. Rush to the nearby hospital for management, because if you don't do an emergency rush, you could end up maybe losing your life. We'll be back from that short commercial break to doctor. We would love to pick on from there. Someone has had the presentations you told us in the first segment, the signs and symptoms. They have rushed to the clinic, sorry, you said hospital as you guided. How do you guys always confirm that maybe this is an intestinal obstruction other than any other condition? Thank you.
So basically, we do the following tests to confirm that someone has an intestinal obstruction. The first test we shall do a complete blood count. That is a CBC. And in most cases, when you do the CBC, you will find that the white blood cells are elevated. Yes. Then also another test we can do is a random blood glucose. Remember, as I had mentioned earlier, this person is not absorbing nutrients, they're not absorbing glucose. So when you do the random blood glucose, most of the times you will find that the sugar levels are low. Someone will be hypoglycemic. Then also we can do serum electrolytes. Serum electrolytes, we are basically looking at sodium, potassium, chloride, yes, levels in the blood. So when you do the serum electrolytes, you will find that most of the times the sodium is low, and even the chloride is low. Then also we can do tumor markers. Tumor markers help us in ruling out cancers. For example, as I mentioned earlier, the most associated cancer linked to intestinal obstruction is the colorectal cancer. That is cancer of the large intestines. Yes. So we can do tumor markers. Yeah, that tumor marker is called carcinoembryonic antigen, CEA. So once that tumor marker, we test for it in the blood. Once it's elevated, it can also help us. It can show that someone is having that cancer, the colorectal cancer. Yeah. So basically, those are the lab tests we do. Then also we can go ahead and do X-ray imaging. We can do some imaging also to confirm if someone has an IO. And here we do a plain erect abdominal X-ray. In fact, you can forget about all I've said, but this one here, it's the major investigation that is done to confirm. It confirms that someone has and it confirms that someone has an intestinal obstruction. Plain erect abdominal X-ray. Yes, and even it's cheaper compared to other modalities like CT scan. You can also do a CT scan, but CT scans are expensive. A CT scan can go for around 250. And here in West Nile, it's only a rural regional referral that does it. It's expensive. But a plain erect abdominal X-ray can be like 30,000. Even a peasant can afford. Yes. So you can do a CT scan. We can also do endoscopy to confirm if someone has an IO. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Carol. However, you talked about endoscopy. You could also briefly describe for us what's always done during the endoscopy. Thank you.
So endoscopy is where a flexible tube connected to a camera is inserted into the GIT, into the digestive system. Like there's a tube, it is inserted via the mouth into the esophagus, stomach, but it's connected to a camera, so it looks at the inside of the digestive system to see what is causing the obstruction.
These different tests, maybe you guys call diagnosis done to confirm that someone could be having an intestinal obstruction. And now we assume, you have gotten someone, you have done the most common, you said the abdominal x-ray, you have confirmed this person has an intestinal obstruction. You told us this case of someone having an intestinal obstruction is an emergency. Which cares do you always give and the management to such patients?
Basically, the management of intestinal obstruction, we do the following. When the patient comes, the first thing we ensure that we put the patient on nil per os. We make sure the patient doesn't eat anything, because this patient is already vomiting. So we put that patient on nil per os. They're not supposed to eat anything. Then also we put the patient on antiemetics. These are drugs that help to stop the vomiting. But these antiemetics we give through the vein. We don't give these tablets for swallowing. So basically, in intestinal obstruction, we try to avoid anything to do with the mouth. Whether food or oral medications, we tend to avoid them. So even the antiemetics we give, all the drugs that we are going to be giving will be through the what? Through the vein. Yes. So we give antiemetics. These are drugs that are given to stop vomiting. Then also we give fluids. These fluids can range from normal saline, Ringer's lactate, or even glucose, dextrose, because this person is losing fluids. This person is vomiting, is not absorbing anything, not absorbing glucose, not absorbing water. So what we do, we give IV, intravenous fluids. Yes, to try to replace the fluids that are lost. Also, we give glucose to try to replenish the glucose levels, because as I had mentioned earlier, these patients are hypoglycemic. Yeah, so we give fluids. Then also we give IV antibiotics. Yes, we give antibiotics also. Then also we put an NG tube. Most of these patients, there's an NG tube. It's a nasogastric tube. We insert it through the nose into the digestive system. The reason we put an NG tube, we are trying to decompress the intestines, because we know that in intestinal obstruction, intestinal contents have accumulated in the lumen of the intestine. So we put an NG tube and we try to remove those contents. Yes, so that we can decompress the intestines. Yes, that is more of the medical management. And also I would want to put a point that sometimes you can find patients, when you put them on this management, on this medical management, sometimes the IO the intestinal obstruction can resolve. Yes, but once we have done this and the intestinal obstruction has failed to resolve, we go ahead and do surgery. And in surgery, there's a procedure called XLAP that is done to try to correct the obstruction. Yeah, XLAP, the abdomen is open through layers, and we try to look for what is causing the obstruction. Once the surgeons find out what is causing the obstruction, they manage it surgically.
For taking us through the management, actually told us there are two, medical and there are surgical management. However, more on the surgical management. You have like, the viewer has like a client and they are at home. They have undergone, maybe you called it the X-lab, to identify the cause of this intestinal obstruction, and it has been worked upon. Which care also do you always give to caretakers to enable proper and quick healing of these wounds of these patients who have undergone these surgeries of intestinal obstruction?
This is basically maybe post-operative management, like after the procedure has been done, what we can do to ensure that there is faster wound healing. First of all, after the procedure, the patient is put on antibiotics. Yes, I have intravenous antibiotics to ensure that antibiotics keep the wound clean, and also ensure faster healing. Yeah, so the patient is put on antibiotics. Then also this patient is encouraged, like after the operation, like let me say after 24 hours, these patients are encouraged to ambulate. Ambulation is like the patient shouldn't stay on bed but keep on moving, like moving around the ward. So also ambulation, there is evidence that supports that early ambulation also helps in quicker wound healing. The patient shouldn't just stay on the bed because maybe they've finished the operation. No, we also encourage ambulation. Then also after the operation, these patients are that nil per os. They're not supposed to eat anything also after the operation until maybe they start passing, maybe until they start passing flutters, or stool. That's when they will start eating. But these patients are basically, the caretakers are supposed to make sure that the patients follow instructions that have been given by the medical professionals, not giving them anything until this patient starts passing flutters or stool. Yes. Then also at home, maybe after they have been discharged from the hospital and they have gone home, you can also encourage the patient to eat foods rich in protein. As you know that proteins are also good in wound healing, like eggs, milk. Yeah, the wound can heal faster. Yes, thank you.
This is something very crucial, and as an emergency, it's not something to play or joke around with. Then also I would love you to give us some of the complications. We often have people, especially men, they say we are hard people. They get such challenges, they fail to go to the hospital to seek care. What complications could they develop in this case? Thank you.
Thank you. So before I talk about the complications, I would like to give a small, I know it's scientific, a small pathophysiology that will help us understand the complications. Yes. Since in obstruction, as I mentioned earlier, the anterograde movement of food, the normal flow of food has been interfered with. So you find that the food will end up accumulating within the lumen of the intestines. So when the food accumulates within the lumen, what will happen? With time, the walls of the intestines will begin to swell. That is what we call edema. There will be swelling of the walls of the intestines. And because of that swelling of the walls of the intestines, you'll find that blood supply to the intestines will be interfered with. There's what we call ischemia. So blood supply to the walls of the intestines will be interfered with. Remember, intestines are also like tissues. They need to survive. They need oxygen, nutrients to continue surviving. You get it? These are tissues. So they also need like oxygen, nutrients. So if the blood supply is cut off, it means that the intestinal tissue, there will be, if the blood supply is cut off, it means the intestinal tissue, there will be death of the intestinal tissue, what we call necrosis. So when there is death of the intestinal tissue, you'll find that with time there will be perforation of the intestines. Like a hole will form within the walls of the intestine because of the death of the intestinal tissue. So that will bring us to the complication of perforation. It is the most common complication when it comes to intestinal obstruction. Perforation of the intestines. And because of this perforation, you will find that what is in the lumen of the intestine will end up leaking into the outside of the intestine. You'll find that intestinal contents will start leaking into the abdominal cavity. So when there's leaking of intestinal contents into the abdominal cavity, someone will get sepsis, or what we call septic shock. You understand? Yeah, because that environment outside the intestine is supposed to be sterile. You understand? It's supposed to be a clean environment. So once there's that leaking, is another complication that will come in. That is what? That will be sepsis. You understand? So basically, those are the two complications I wanted to emphasize on. Perforation. So if you're to delay at home, just know you're predisposing your patient to perforation of what? Of the intestines. You're predisposing the patient to what? To sepsis, getting sepsis or septic shock. And once a patient reaches to an extent of getting septic shock, most of the times it is very difficult to bring this patient back to the normal what? Physiology. Then another complication that can come from intestinal obstruction is aspiration. Because the patient is vomiting, you will find that since the esophagus and the trachea are just near each other, some of those contents will end up moving into the trachea, that is the airway. And when those contents move into the trachea, that's what we call aspiration, and can also lead to pneumonia. Yes, because in the airway, the only thing we want is air. We don't want anything from the intestines. So another complication is pneumonia, which can also what? Kill. Yes. Also, to emphasize on this, aspiration also in medicine, it's very difficult to reverse it. Once a patient has aspirated, they need to be even in HDU, high dependency units, and put on those good antibiotics. Yes. Then also electrolyte abnormalities, because as you're vomiting, you're losing sodium, you're losing potassium. So this will lead to electrolyte abnormalities. Then also fluid deficits. You're losing fluids. You're vomiting, you're losing fluids. So there will be fluid deficits. The patient will present with signs of dehydration. Yes. Then also the last complication is death. So all this, when you're to sum up all these complications, the final end point is death. The person can end up dying. Thank you.
Hope the viewers have heard. In case you delay at home, the end point is death. All right, doctor. We would love also to give in the preventive care in like management. In case someone you have taken us through of what intestinal obstruction is, we have gotten to understand it's life-threatening and can take a life. How can the viewer at home who is viewing us keep themselves from getting this intestinal obstruction?
As you all know that prevention is better than cure. So it's better to prevent. So one of the ways you can prevent intestinal obstruction is avoid smoking. Because smoking and alcohol are the major risk factors when it comes to cancers, especially those abdominal cancers, the colorectal cancers. Yes. So I would encourage our viewers to avoid smoking and also taking a lot of alcohol. Then also avoiding heavy lifting. As we know that heavy lifting can predispose to hernias. When you lift heavy things, this can increase the intra-abdominal pressure, hence causing protrusion of intestinal contents through the abdominal wall, which is herniation. So I know some people heavy lifting is their source of income. That is what they depend on to make ends meet, but we should regulate on heavy lifting. Yes. Then also exercise. Basically, exercise, when someone is physically active, the digestive system also will be functioning well. Exercise resets all the systems in the body. Exercise is good for the cardiovascular system, the digestive system, all the systems in the body. When someone is exercising, are able to function well with exercise. Then also I would encourage us to hydrate. Hydration, at least in a day, take around 2 to 3 liters of water to enable proper functioning of what? Of the digestive system, hydration, then even diet, having a balanced diet, limit on high fiber foods like cassava, though the evidence that links cassava consumption to IO is limited, but yes, let's regulate on high fiber foods. Yes, basically that. Thank you.
The viewers have not remained the same. With your advice, they will follow it up such that they don't fall victims of intestinal obstruction. However, you can give in your conclusion remarks and take home message as we conclude the program. Thank you.
Okay, my take home is to the viewers is that intestinal obstruction is not a simple condition. It is something that can take your life, and early diagnosis is always the way to go. Early diagnosis and prevention is always the way to go. Don't attempt to manage this from home. Once you notice the signs that I've talked about, which is majorly vomiting, severe abdominal pain, abdominal swelling, and also failure to pass stool or gas for some days, quickly take the patient to the hospital. Don't attempt to manage the patient from home. Yes, thank you.
IMC CCare branch Arua, we don't take it for granted. And also to the viewer who gave in your time to listen to this educative program, thank you very much. I've been your host, Sunday Junior Tom, together with Sophie behind the camera. Till we meet again next Thursday from 11 a.m. to noon. Thank you.